Hello there, everyone. This is Greg Aden coming to you live from Denver, Colorado for another episode of Servant Leadership Podcast. And today I've got the pleasure of bringing to you Chris Lincoln, who's coming to us actually from overseas, over the pond, as we used to say, in London, England. Chris, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm really well, Greg. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. To everyone listening, Chris and I met just about 2 weeks ago via LinkedIn. He was
Yeah.
a very interesting young man with a young family and lots going on. But what really intrigued me about Chris was his interest in relationships, leadership, coaching, mentoring. And Chris currently is a relationship manager for global data located there in London. And
Yep.
I understand it's got thousands of employees and a large global reach. But before we get into who you work for and what do you do, tell us a little bit about you, Chris, and get us up to speed with who you are, what do you do, but more importantly, why do you do what you do?
Yeah. So thanks for the wonderful introduction, Greg. I think, you know, going back to the beginning, I really had a passion for music. That's kind of where it all really started for me. It was an opportunity for me to learn something independently, and I learned an instrument. I learned guitar at a young age, and then once I got good at it, I really wanted to teach others how to play, and that was where I really kind of discovered mentoring and coaching. I went to the US in Pennsylvania for a couple of summers while I was at University of Leeds teaching music. So when I was in the States, I got the opportunity to teach piano and to teach drums the following year. And I worked with kids who were from the age of 7 to the age of 17.
Wow.
And so obviously that age range brings different challenges in itself, but also, different opportunities.
Sure.
And so um, it was awesome because I would work with kids who were in some cases better than me at playing because they had private tuition where I was self-taught, and in other cases that there were kids who had never looked at an instrument and were really intimidated. And so I had to be really agile in the way that I helped them and find new creative ways and to support them and help them on their journey to play music that they loved. And so example I remember giving you, Greg, was one kid who he'd been private tutored for a long time, and he knew some like Egyptian scale that I'd never even heard of. And I was just like, what am I going to do with this kid? And then the more and more I spoke to him and kind of asked him about his experiences in the music, he told me how strict his lesson plans were. And so I asked him the question, have you ever written your own music?
Yeah.
And he was like, no, I've never been asked to do that. So I was like, okay, well, that's what we're going to do right now. And then I taught him how to compose and to how to be, free with what he can do, with what he can play. He didn't need to play something from beginning to end. Like, and that was like a brand new discovery for him. On the opposite side of things, I had a kid who literally told me that, I don't think I'm meant to play guitar, and that hit me so hard. And this was such a pivotal moment for me, because it energized me and motivated me to really want to teach him. And so after hearing him say that, and he flipped the guitar down on his lap, and I could see he'd like given up. And I knew how hard it was to learn an instrument, because I was spending like 4 hours a night after
Sure.
school just playing, right? It's not something you can just pick up and do. And so I kind of looked at that kid and I just thought, I really want to help him. And so I spent extra time with him, and eventually he was able to play along to one of his favorite songs that he picked, and he got to perform that in front of like 400 or 500 kids at the summer camp that I worked at, and his face was just lit up, and you could tell he was just in his element. And it was moments like that, like during this whole experience in that I had in America, where I was like, this is what I really want to do. I really want to learn things so I can help other people do things that they really want to do. And that's where it started for me. And ever since, I've always, in every job that I've had. So my last job, I was a senior consultant in intellectual property, very early on, I created a training and development program because I saw so many gaps in the training, and I was like,
Sure.
there's so many things that I could have been taught in the first 6 months that would
Yeah.
have like helped me hit the ground running. And
Sure.
so I really wanted to put something like that together. So I've always been really keen in educating and mentoring and helping. And I think that is probably for me one of the most core parts of leadership and relationship management is wanting to support. And Greg, I love how you put it, and it's been in my head since we had the conversation that to serve others, to be of service to others. And I always had this thirst for knowledge, to experience. And what I didn't anticipate for a long period of time was that was because I really wanted to help other people understand things. I mean that story of with the kid in America, I will never forget that. I will never ever forget that moment where he put the guitar, flopped it down his lap, and just gave up, and you could see it in his face, and it sparked something in me that over 10 years later I've continued to think about and frame in my head when it comes to helping others or seeing people who are
Yeah.
trying to do something I really want to do, but they just need someone to show them or someone to like encourage them.
We need to continue as leaders, men, women, human beings, teach others how important it is to just play, just
Yeah,
have fun, enjoy what the
yeah,
heck it is you're doing. And then I love your
absolutely.
question that you challenged the first example with, have you ever tried?
Mm,
So you're really good, son, you're really good partner, you're really good client, but have you ever tried? And then boom, whatever comes out of your head and your heart next is something to really get this individual to think, you know what? I'm really good at playing instruments, but I know I've never written a song before.
yeah,
And then boom,
absolutely.
you coach, lead, and mentor. Love it. And then
Yeah.
you also, the third example, mainly with Josh, is you gave them something to believe in. You
Mm,
gave them something to look at themselves differently.
mm,
And that is also a leader, a coach, a mentor. And, just even before you arrived at Global Data, look at the beautiful history that you've had
mm.
helping others see their potential, overcome something that might keep them from doing something they didn't even know was there. And
Yeah,
then certainly encouraging people to try. And I hear education is important to you. I hear empathy is important to you. You're obviously
yeah.
a humble human being, and
Thank you.
Lord knows there's not enough of you out there. So thank you.
Thanks,
Um,
Greg.
well, no, thank you. I'm just the guy facilitating conversation, but I'm listening for all these beautiful things our listeners are listening to, Chris.
Mm,
Hearing you say, Chris. So
mm.
off air, we talked about three different things, but relationship management is not only in your title, but it is what you do. So
Yeah.
when you hear someone is a relationship manager,
Mm.
what does that really mean? And what do you want our listeners to know and believe what it is you really do?
I think that's such a good question because what it says in the title is that you manage relationships, which I think is part of it. But what you're really doing is you're nourishing those relationships, you're
Mm,
nurturing those relationships. And when I first started the role, I didn't have clients at the beginning, and a lot of it was building relationships internally,
mhm.
understanding who all the experts were in their field, so I knew who to call to when a client needed something. And what I realized the power of that later on because I really took the time to sit down with as many people as I could who were junior, were middle management, were at senior level, were at director level, because I really wanted to understand the entire customer journey. I also wanted to make good connections and good relationships inside the business.
Sure.
And as I was saying, like I realized the power of that later because when I did get clients and I needed help, which everyone does in
Yeah.
regardless of what kind of leadership status you're at, like everyone needs help, right? And I feel like a big part of my role that I realized later on was that it was really about connecting people to other people a lot of the time, because we all need certain things, whether it's intelligence, support, clarity, um, and connecting them to the right person who made them feel comfortable with the decisions that they were going to be making was a big part of my role. And so that's something I say regularly to my clients, is like a big part of my role is connecting you to the right people, as well as connecting you to the right piece of information. And then second to that, being a voice for them within the business. So I build genuine, authentic relationships with my clients where I listen and I understand, or try to understand, what it is that's going to make them successful and is going
Yeah.
to make them happy and feel like they can come to me for whatever it is they might need. And I try and make that happen. I figure out what's achievable, and then I go to the business and I say, this is what the client wants. And sometimes I'll get pushback, sometimes I'll get full support. If it's a thing that's a big deal that's going to take a lot of time, a lot of resource, it's my job to find the compromise and to find out what it is that we can deliver and fend for that client. When I think about my job, it's also, I originally thought that this means I'm managing my clients' relationships external to the business. I was so wrong about that, because such
Yeah.
a big part of it was building and managing the relationships, or nourishing and nurturing, as we said, the relationships with my colleagues, because without them, I would be useless. Like I wouldn't have anything to offer my clients beyond a like good conversation and maybe, some top level insight.
Yeah,
But we have,
let me jump in here for a second because
yeah,
I want to ask you the $1 million question. How do you really find out what your clients want and need, not only from you but your organization and your team? What do you do?
I
How do,
listen. I
thank you. That's it.
yeah,
You
I mean, I ask questions, and
yes.
I think, you have to kind of understand that person's universe in a sense. So when I first join a meeting, I've been in so many meetings and so many conversations, and I've traveled a lot. So when I start to have a conversation with someone, I can pick up fairly quickly, what the general mood of this person might be, or where the direction of the conversation might be going. And
Hmm.
and I remember in my training and development piece that I put together in my last job, I talked about two different types of clients, one that needed to be guided and the other that needed to be listened to.
Hmm.
And some clients I dealt with who are incredibly intelligent and incredibly capable would come into these meetings and just expect the topics to be handed to them, to be brought up, and to get them talking. And other clients would just want to tell you everything they want. They have their requirements, they've got their deadlines, they've got a vision for what they want to achieve, and they know what you're there for, and they know what they want from you. Whereas other,
Hmm.
like I said before, like in some cases they have no idea what to expect from you, and you have to be prepared to be able to help both. And so I think listening is really the most effective way into figuring out how to best serve your clients. And if they aren't being that talkative, what I've found is being kind of talkative and bringing a positive energy to a conversation makes them feel a little bit more comfortable, and then they start to talk, and then that is your opportunity to listen and show that respect. Because a lot of people who don't really talk a lot, and then they maybe they're a little bit shy. Like my wife is like the shyest person in the world. And when so it's really, really important that when they do talk, that you don't get overconfident and interrupt
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
that point. And I see people doing that a lot, is they're trying to get some movement in the conversation, and then they'll see that person start to react and start to talk, and then they'll be like, oh thank God, and then they'll start like talking over them thinking a conversation's happening, but it isn't. And
But even there, the beautiful nuggets, right? You
yeah,
you you said there's some people that just want to be listened to because he or she or they have
mm,
a pretty good idea of what they're looking for, and
yeah,
they want to inform you as to what they believe is true and what they believe they want from you in your role.
yeah,
But then the people that aren't, you lead them, you
mm,
guide them, you
mm,
serve them, but you
mm,
can't possibly end up doing anything for them unless you're inquisitive or curious enough to find out what it is they want. And I've got a saying, it's been adapted by hundreds of people out there that I've been serving, but it's
mm,
how may I serve you?
yeah,
It's not how can I help you, it's how may I serve you, and it's kind of catching on, and I even off air, you and I spoke about it a little bit. I literally ask my boys, how can I be a better dad today? What
oh,
is it that you really want me to do so that, right? And the so that is
that's awesome.
typically have a better day, do better at school, have better friends, treat the
Mm,
girls at school better. I mean, whatever it is, I don't know how to serve them unless I ask. And I see that
yeah,
in, again, we don't manage relationships. We certainly don't manage conversations.
mm.
And we don't manage people. So again, just love the way you show up for people. And
What you said that really kind of struck out to me there was about being aware, because I think that's one of the strongest components you can have if you want to be a leader. Is you have to have the awareness, and the kind of difficult part or of the journey of becoming aware, because I realized actually I wasn't very self-aware early in my career,
good for you.
um, was that you have to look at some ugly parts of yourself that that kind of suck. And I remember like kind of first feeling like, oh wow, that's kind of what humble sounds like, when I said to, I think this was in my interview actually for the relationship manager role, where I was doing like a bunch of LinkedIn courses. They asked me like what made me like them so much, like what is it that I got out of them, and why was I doing them. And I remember thinking, well, I thought I was really good at these things. And so I thought, oh, just, smoothing out the rough edges. But it turned out like a lot of the advice in these courses just completely went over my head. I was like, I've never thought of it like that. And I'm
Sure.
clearly not that competent at this particular thing that I'm trying to get good at. And so I think a big part of becoming a leader is being open to the fact that you're not as necessarily an expert as much as you think you might be. And it's worth going out there, taking a look at other people's work or other people's materials, speaking with others about particular subjects, and then being able to really understand how good or not so good in some of my cases
Sure.
that you are. And
Well,
if you can't, sorry.
no, I was just going to say there's a lot of people that are experts in skills. There's
Yeah.
experts in tasks and projects.
Mm,
But to be an expert in leadership, you first need to understand how important listening, the art of asking great questions,
mm,
curiosity, being humble enough to not say anything when the person in front of you is struggling, other
mm.
than take your time. And
Yeah.
and and I also I love distinctions. My leadership coaching has brought me to the world of distinction. I love to coach with it. And I would say that one thing you said earlier was how someone owns a room. I
Mm,
believe if you're a good or a great leader, you know what it likes to own the room relative to it. When somebody needs help, you step in. When someone else is doing really well and you just need to step back. But
yeah.
there's a difference
100%.
between owning the room and controlling the room. And
Yes.
I believe leaders that need to pull their head out of their you know what are those that need that believe they need to control every single element of every meeting, and
Yeah.
they start, they middle everybody, they tell everybody here's what they're going to talk about, and then they actually talk about it for them, and then
Mm,
they answer for them, and that's control, and there's no place in leadership for control. And
yeah.
I want to wrap up with something that you mentioned off air again, is you're putting together something called charismatic communication with clients.
Yeah.
How is it then Chris Lincoln is working on a project that's about charismatic communication with clients? And again, I believe I know some of the answers, but
Yeah. Sure.
I want you to tell our audience, what does charismatic communication mean to you? And why is it important?
I think what it means to me is really making people feel good and comfortable around you,
Mm,
and feeling like they can be themselves and be open. And
beautiful.
it's some of the things that kind of came natural to me, but also some of the things that I really wasn't great at. And I recently started reading this incredible book by a woman called Vanessa Van Edwards called Cues. And she used to work for the FBI as a human behavior analyst. And she defines charisma so well in the beginning of her book, where she talks about how it's essentially like looking at a scale of competence and warmth. And what a lot of people do is they work really hard in one area, but not necessarily so much in the other area. And if you can make tweaks so that you're as competent as you are warm, then you're in the charisma zone. I think is what she calls it. And that really made me think about previous conversations that I'd had where I'd kind of maybe I was being a bit trying to be a bit too competent. Maybe as
Sure.
being trying to be a bit too knowledgeable in that conversation when that person really needed me to be funny or to be silly. It made me think about all the kinds of like people that I thought were charismatic leaders and where they could have actually improved. And it really aided me in thinking, okay, I recognize a lot of this stuff from the way I communicate with my clients. And I see when I've had meetings in the past with colleagues where they haven't been warm enough, or maybe they didn't
Sure.
do their research enough. And so one of the things that I wanted to do in my company is basically take a lot of the kind of tools that I've learned from communicating with my clients.
Hmm.
Like for example, one that I'm doing right now is, and one I do regularly in my calls, is I show my hands. And even though that the hands, for example, kind of represent trust and openness,
Sure.
it also says to my clients, I'm not typing on my keyboard, and I'm not here clicking around looking at the screen. And now that we're in such a kind of virtual dynamic with the way that we communicate with our businesses and with our clients, we have to have a composure that says, I'm here in the room for you and I'm
Present.
listening to you. I'm present. Exactly.
Yes.
And so I do that in all my meetings. I look at the camera, I'm like, can they see my hands? Yeah, you can see my hands. They know that I'm not doing something else. And when I'm listening, and I talked about listening, I'll do this, or I'll kind of make sure there's one hand free, and just so they know I'm there for them. And I
Yeah.
think that is a warmth cue, what
Beautiful.
Vanessa would call a warmth cue. And so I really wanted to, as soon as I started getting all this knowledge and kind of confirmation in areas where I don't know if you've ever done this, Greg,
Absolutely.
where you've read something or you've learned something, you're like, oh my god, that's why that worked like that time with that client. That's why that I never really thought about it as a concept or that it was a technique. It just, but now it makes sense.
Hmm.
I started reading a lot of these in her book, and I was like, okay, this is great. I want to share this with everyone else so that they can have these conversations with their clients where their clients feel great and they feel great, and they can unleash a confidence perhaps that they didn't understand just through changing
Well,
small things.
yeah, and you're mentioning affirmations and
Mm,
confirmation, and
mm,
again, beautifully stated. Now you want to go out and share what
mm,
you've affirmed is true, or might be confirmed for someone else to help out. Let me ask you
mm.
again. The name of the book is
It's Cues, Cues,
okay.
by Vanessa Van Edwards.
Van Edwards. Okay, I am going
Yeah,
to order the book. Love it. By the way, love the way you want to show your hands, and
thank
I really enjoy the way you make an intentional effort to listen. And I
you. Mm.
say, and listening with your eyes too. I've noticed
You
that
have to.
you do that very well, and you're not distracted. The only
Thanks.
reason I've been looking down is because I've written so many notes during our time together today,
Yeah,
Chris
yeah.
Lincoln, and I'm not asking Global Data to change your mind, but I'm going to close by saying, Chris Lincoln, it's been a pleasure having you on the Servant Leadership Podcast. I hope you and
Thank you.
a lot of people that you work with get an idea to really reflect back on what it is they admire about another human being
Mm,
who moved them in a way that it made them become a better man or better woman or better leader, better teacher, better parent. And then
Mm,
mention them and share, because we can all learn from people we've never even met because we're in
mm.
front of someone that learned something from you. So thank you for that. And
Thank
I'm
you.
just gonna relate. I'm just gonna call you a relationship nurturer. I love that phrase.
I'll talk to my director and see if we can get that changed.
And put it in underneath relationship manager, but ask your
Yeah,
director that question when you're having coffee with him or her next. Do
yeah.
you really manage? Do I really manage relationships?
I love that question so much.
Yeah,
I'm going to
and
ask her that. She's on
yeah.
holiday at the moment, but as soon as she gets back, I'm definitely going to ask her.
Well, let her get through her inbox first, so she'll
Yes, definitely will.
she'll have
I
more
actually
time to listen to you.
I
That's
actually scheduled an email to go to her today for the day after she comes back to work. So I'm already way ahead of you,
Well,
Greg.
and then when she really has a lot of time, and after this gets edited, I'd love for you to put it in front of her and just let her know that we appreciate her, and
Yeah,
I bet you that she's also someone that you enjoy working for, or
she's amazing.
you wouldn't have been laughing when you mentioned her name. So.
Mm.
With that, Chris Lincoln from London, England, with Global Data, the Global Relationship Manager, Global Relationship Nurturer. Thank you for being with us today. And remember, ask good questions. Be a role model for someone that you don't even know needs a role model, and be a great mentor. Ladies and gentlemen, men and women, peoples, I'm learning all my new acronyms, the he and the she and the they and the there. And I've was reminded recently that, not everybody's a lady and a gentleman. They just who they are. They're just a human being. They're just a person. And I'm realizing that the sensitivities of our state, so to speak, is it doesn't matter what I think someone else should be called. It's what they want to be referred to or seen as. And so be kind, be empathetic, be gentle with people out there. And again, this is Greg Aiden with Aiden Leadership for another episode of Servant Leadership Podcast. And be kind and God bless.